Story 1. In 2020, I lost my uncle to a heart attack, an aunt to COVID-19, my cousin relapsed and overdosed, and my husband died during what was supposed to have been a routine surgery. Story 2. Dang. I am genuinely sorry for everyone who has lost someone or something. I hope peace and healing find all of you, and happy days are ahead. All my love is sent your way. Story 3. The years 2022 and 2023 are tied for me. I lost my mother in the last quarter of 2022 and my father a little less than 4 months later. Story 4. In 2017, I had a major back injury and surgery that delayed a scheduled hip replacement. Then my house burned to the ground, and I had to put my beloved blue heeler, Gus, down 3 days after the fire. Story 5. In 2012, my wife was arrested and later convicted for felony murder. I discovered she had been unfaithful, and I had to pick up the pieces. It was a difficult time, and I almost did not make it through. Story 6. 2016 was the hardest year for me. I lost a loved one unexpectedly, and it felt like my whole world fell apart. Story 7. 2022 was both the most heartbreaking and most empowering year for me. My wife and I had 2 miscarriages, and one of the doctors told us that having children might not be possible for us after the second one. The second miscarriage was especially hard. My wife had 3 positive pregnancy tests and experienced the typical signs of pregnancy. In the first 2 months, the first doctor said things looked very promising, and we were hopeful. Then we went for the ultrasound and learned the truth. A few of our friends were having healthy pregnancies and talking about their happiness, and we had to smile while hiding our pain. 3 miscarriages over 2 years, with 2 occurring in 1 year. Towards the end of the year, my wife slipped on our porch, fell off and broke her arm. I did not hear her through the wind and rain from inside, but when I noticed she had been gone for a while letting the dogs out, I looked out the window and heard her crying. I felt helpless and guilty. I found her on the ground in the water and mud, and my heart broke. The next day, when she was coming downstairs, I started crying because I imagined her falling down the stairs and getting hurt again. At the same time, I was in early sobriety. I had just entered my 2nd year of total sobriety and experienced many difficult emotions. There were many days I wanted a beer, and I could not even drink soda because the carbonation reminded me of beer. The year was empowering because I learned that we are strongest in hardship when we rely on each other. It was also empowering because I accepted that many things are beyond my control, but I could choose sobriety regardless of my circumstances. Story 8. In 2006, my father suddenly died, and my family completely lost it. He was the glue in the family, and none of us truly recovered. My life derailed completely and fell apart in many ways. I know if he had lived, things would have been much better in multiple ways for everyone. Story 9. Also in 2024, getting divorced after almost 20 years. And Dad probably will not make it much longer. Story 10. 2016 to 2017. Suicide attempt. 6-month gap. Maternal grandmother died. Another 6-month gap. Father died. Glad I never talked about the first one with either of them. Story 11. In 2022, I left my psychotic and abusive wife. Since then, no one has yelled at me, and my presence has not upset anyone. Story 12. On January 7, 2016, my 15-year-old stepson committed suicide. I have not been right since. I am finally starting therapy tomorrow after neglecting myself. It is okay to ask for help if you are hurting people. Story 13. In 2002 and 2003, I lost both parents, was stalked, and my home was ransacked. I moved 800 miles away to escape the stalker. During this time, I started a new job, underwent surgery for a life-threatening health issue, likely related to stress, and experienced the end of a new relationship. Story 14. From 2005 to 2008, I lost my grandfather to cancer in 2005. I had a hard time dealing with the loss and became suicidal in 2007. The school district became difficult and treated me unfairly. They suspended me for the rest of my freshman year. I had to see a therapist who prescribed medication that did not seem to work, so I decided to use logic instead. For some reason, I continued to see the school psychologist throughout high school even though I was fine. Story 15. In 2020, I lost my best friend of 20 years. Amy, I miss you dearly, and although you were not human, you were human enough to bring out the best in me. Story 16. In 2015, I watched my mother lose her battle to cancer, and she died right before my high school graduation. Story 17. In 2020, I lost my ex-husband and had to tell my children that he had passed away. Story 18. In 2020, my husband was diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. In 2021, I was his caregiver as his condition worsened until he died in October. Story 19. In 2021, I lost my dog, my grandmother, my mother, and my sister all to cancer. Story 20. During the 2014 to 2015 school year, I was severely depressed and extremely suicidal at the ages of 12 to 13. I genuinely believed I would successfully take my own life. However, the 2015 to 2016 school year was the best year of my life to this day. The second worst time was my freshman year of high school from 2016 to 2017. It was not as bad as 7th grade, but it was still very difficult. I was not supposed to live to 14, yet here I am at 22, still somehow alive. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I know I will eventually die by my own hand. My fate is already set in stone. There is nothing I can do to progress in life, as I was not supposed to live this long. My story ended at 14. I am not supposed to be here. Story 21. In 2021, my grandmother passed away. I have not been the same person ever since. Story 22. 2021 was a rough year for me, mostly during the summer and fall months. Everything that could go wrong did. First, my youngest cat suddenly became ill. I took him to the emergency room, and they told me he had lymphoma. He was only 5 years old, the absolute sweetest boy. I took him home. With medication, it seemed very early stage, so he should have had time, maybe even treatable. I had to put him down the next morning as he could barely stand. He went downhill like that in under 24 hours. My oldest cat also got very sick because he lost his friend, but he is still around today. Then, 2 days later, I went to the barn to visit my horse to cheer myself up. I noticed right away that he was the only one inside. I pulled him out and he was putting no weight on his right front leg. It was not a broken leg, but I spent weeks rehabbing him and thousands on x-rays and special shoes to get him through it. The barn owner was never going to text me that he was injured. We moved barns shortly after. Within 2 weeks of moving him, my oldest mare, who was at a retirement barn, started acting strange and stopped eating. That was not unusual for her since she was very picky. One day, she coalesced and I immediately panicked. She had never been sick in the 10 years I had her. It's never good for a 27-year-old horse. The veterinarian showed up and found a basketball-sized tumor around her bladder and uterus. I had to have her put down that night. I had several other difficult experiences between these events, and it was just a horrible year all around. Story 23. The year 2016 began with the deaths of David Bowie and Alan Rickman. It did not improve. Story 24. This year could be shaping up to be that year. I just lost my girlfriend and job within 48 hours. The years 2020 to 2021 were also difficult due to the pandemic. I was in my last year of undergraduate studies, and I believe it negatively affected my final 2 semesters. Additionally, I experienced a significant amount of anxiety caused by personal issues combined with academic pressures. Story 25. Definitely 2021. I was getting over my first breakup, got involved in a minor car accident and lost the car in the process. My eating was out of control, I lost my job earlier in the year, missed an entire semester of school, and my self-esteem was at an all-time low. I am so glad I overcame these obstacles and am doing much better now. Story 26. Toss-up between 2004, 2009, and 2010. 2 deaths and another type of loss that still affect me today. Story 27. All the really bad ones seem to also have a pile of good. In 2014, my girlfriend and I bought our house. We have been married almost 8 years now, and we love our house. We spent a month painting, upgrading, and moving in and adopted cats. About 2 months after closing, my grandfather died. He was and remains my most important family member. He taught me so much, understood me, and we really enjoyed all the time we spent together. He thought the world of my wife. At least I got to show him pictures of the house and what I had achieved. I like to think he would be proud of me, using much of what he taught me to spend endless weekends on this labor of love. Story 28. 2019 was a crazy year. I started it in January on my honeymoon. In June, we moved to a new state. In November, we celebrated our first wedding anniversary. Then, 2 weeks after that, she wanted to open the marriage. I guess the bright spot was going to Disney in December. That was cool. Honestly, I think this year was the roughest. I found out the person I mentioned got married to the man she left me for. The next person I dated after that, and stupidly broke up with because of unresolved trauma from that first relationship, got engaged this year. I tried and failed to date people this year, much like every year since fall of 2021. Even with therapy, what I had been through before deeply damaged my sense of trust in myself and others. My social anxiety has gone haywire. I have no friends or partners, and being in my 30s has caused me to isolate myself besides work and feel like I am back to the state I was in before I started dating at 25. It doesn't feel like I'm meant to be dating. My brain is too damaged for it and self-sabotages even when something is going well. I never imagined this is where I would be mentally or physically when moving here with the love of my life at the time in 2019. Story 29. In 2023, I had a good job, good income, and a loving family. I started having seizures that caused brain damage and was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. Now, I am a shut-in who struggles to think clearly. Story 30. June 2021 to July 2022. It started when my wife was told she was infertile due to her endometriosis, and we were pressured into in vitro fertilization. In August, she had surgery to treat the endometriosis and was ultimately diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis. They use the same type of staging as cancer to indicate how much it has spread. She was heartbroken, but we started in vitro fertilization. In October, our dog died. He was an old soul we adopted at 10 years old. He was 14 and his decline was rapid. In November, I began to have unusual abdominal pain. We put in vitro fertilization on hold, and I spent the next 3 months with doctors trying to pinpoint the cause. I suffered regular panic attacks, could barely function due to the pain, and entered a depressed state. In January, I was diagnosed with biliary dyskinesia, and in February, my gallbladder was removed. Symptoms alleviated almost instantly. In vitro fertilization produced 2 embryos. We decided to implant one at a time. It was the most ethical way to do it. We are very pro-life and only started the process because we would have absolute control over any embryo created. I have no issue with in vitro fertilization if done ethically like this. In March, the embryo was implanted and split into twins. Things were looking good. In April, the first ultrasound showed 2 heartbeats and a subchorionic hematoma. The babies were given a 50% chance. The next week, a second ultrasound was performed. Only 1 heartbeat was detected, and it was too slow. The hematoma had moved directly over the implantation spot, partially detaching them. At the end of the month, my wife suffered a painful miscarriage. In May and June, I cannot describe the grief or the depression. My wife was the lowest she had ever been. All she wanted was to be a mother. She lost her babies and I was losing her. I had to change something. The only thing I had control over was my job. In July 2022, my wife learned of a doctor who specializes in treating infertility issues like hers. She learned she was a candidate for treatments. She lit up, and the depression disappeared. Surgery was scheduled for the end of the month. I got a new job with a 20% raise, exactly enough to afford treatment. A week before surgery, my wife was confused. Her period had not started. I joked that she should take a pregnancy test. She took 3, all positive. In April 2023, our daughter was born. Story 31. In 2024, I am putting my mother in a nursing home, knowing she will never leave. Story 32. In 2022 and 2024, my heart was broken by two people, and I lost my dog in 2022. I have been depressed ever since. Story 33, 2019. I always tell myself that was the year I died. It was my first year in college as a medical student, which I thought was the place I belonged. However, as time passed, I started to feel extremely anxious. It didn't help that, for the first time in my life, I was one of the worst students in the class. Everyone was much better prepared and more intelligent than me. I couldn't keep up with the classes. This caused severe insecurity in me that led to depression, to the point I dropped the career and had to seek psychiatric help. I had never felt so worthless because I had been seen as a gifted child all my life but couldn't live up to the expectations. Then came the pandemic and everything got worse. I developed health problems that I couldn't properly manage since most hospitals were fully focused on dealing with coronavirus disease 2019. The health problems ultimately led me to undergo surgery, but sadly, I still have lasting effects. Basically, I had a breakdown both mentally and physically. I also lost contact with almost all my friends because I became withdrawn, feeling like a complete failure and not wanting them to see me in that state. A couple of years have passed, and I can say that I am in a better place now, but I am no longer the person I was before. That person died in 2019 and is never coming back. Story 34. 2022 was probably the worst year of my life. I was deep in an unhealthy relationship with someone who was severely depressed. I would have panic attacks in the middle of the night, terrified he would hurt himself. Just thinking about being around him made me extremely anxious. We are still on good terms, and I care for him greatly, but he still hurt me in many ways. It hurts to think about. Story 35. I have never had a heart attack, but it might happen one day, considering that most people die from cardiovascular diseases. Story 36. In 2024, I have had good things happen, but some pretty sad things too. My uncle died, I ended a 6-year relationship, and I have started realizing my friends really are not my friends. But it has opened my eyes and made me stand up for myself and trust myself more. I have stopped caring what others think. I know what will not be compatible in a relationship, and I have stopped being the one to reach out to those so-called friends when they have never made the effort to hang out first or even talk to me first. Really, my real circle of friends is small, but that is better than begging to hang out with the others. I have no problem cutting people off now, and I am done being nice about it. I have learned how to enjoy my own company and live by myself for the first time ever. Also, I will most likely spend the holidays alone for the first time ever, so I might get to have a moment of peace during Christmas. We will see. Life could be worse. I have realized I will never actually have a parental figure in my life to look up to, having been raised by emotionally immature and unavailable parents. Also, as an only child, your world gets to be really small after that. Story 37. In 2022, I lost my father, who was like a best friend, and the best dog in the world within 2 months of each other. Story 38. In 2024, I lost her. Now it has been around 20 days without sleep, living with her in daydreams where she abandoned me, but there she does not hurt. Story 39. In 2024, I finally realized my fiancée was never going to stop binge drinking, lying, and driving or otherwise behaving dangerously while intoxicated. I followed through on the boundaries I had set at the beginning of our relationship. I left. I missed the sober version of her, my home, and my dogs. I hate living in a guest room and commuting over an hour to work. I really thought I had finally met my person, but in hindsight, despite all the sweet nothings, the biggest nothing of all was the lack of respect and partnership I accepted for a decade. Story 40 year as in singular? No, try this entire decade so far. Things have just been downhill since 2020, and I am done with it all. Story 41. In 2021, I lost my stepfather and experienced a severe mental health breakdown. Story 42. 2010. The first time I was ever cheated on. Killed my innocence. Story 43. In 2024, I broke up and have post-traumatic stress disorder after it. Half a year has already passed, but I do not feel better. It may not sound serious, but anyway. Story 44. 2018, not because something bad happened, but because I cannot go back and experience that nostalgic year again. Story 45. Last year, I lost my best friend. He is alive, but he is no longer my friend. He ripped my heart out. Story 46. This year, I threw away my only friendship just to fail at dying and to be locked up like an animal. Then I was released conditionally. I might as well be a dog. Story 47. In 2023, I was tormented and harassed by people I loved like family who secretly hated me. They doxed me while my father passed away. Story 48. In 2024, my dog Lassie passed away in February. Lassie was my soul dog. I never believed in soul dogs until I met her. I never knew I could bond with an animal the way I did with her. Her passing has changed me forever. It does not feel right that she is no longer in my life. I miss her. Story 49. From the end of 2022 to the end of 2023, I was in an abusive trauma bond that completely destroyed me. I am still trying to move on and not think about her. Story 50, 2024. Here I thought I was turning a corner and it was going to be my year. Concussion from abuse in January, still having symptoms. My 3-year-old son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in April. My dear father-in-law died in July in front of our eyes. I have developed an unhealthy addiction to kratom and vaping, but at least it keeps me going for now. Story 51. Even though professionally things went better than ever, on a personal level, 2024 was the worst. I divorced the person I believed to be my soulmate, and since then nothing has been the same, not even a simple walk in the park. All kinds of health issues arose from the stress, but now I am learning to be okay with everything. Eventually, I will be fine. You also got this. Be strong. Story 52. In 2019, I moved to the United States from Europe for my Doctor of Philosophy degree in August after a difficult period. I did not know that the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic would occur in March 2020 and the challenges that lay ahead. Story 53. This one has been pretty brutal so far. Probably the loneliest I have ever felt and did not really see a way out. Story 54. 2023. For pregnancy losses and endless crying. Wondering why and if this will ever happen for us. Meeting our rainbow baby in a week. So glad we got through it. Story 55. In 2023, I found out my husband was cheating with 2 whole families, sleeping with both husbands and wives. This has been happening ever since we moved to a new state where we have no family or friends. He was buying their kids' presents using my Amazon account. The court date to finalize everything is still in November. Story 56. Last year and it still continues this year. Forget growing up, forget losing people, forget living. Story 57. In 2018, my father died by suicide. I entered an abusive relationship. I lost contact with most of my friends and did not have family support. I gained a significant amount of weight. Then, the COVID-19 pandemic followed, leading to dropping out of university, moving to another country without my belongings, and experiencing many other family deaths. It was a very difficult time. Story 58. 2020. Lost my grandmother just after losing my grandfather too. They were everything to us, the light of our lives. My grandmother loved me like nobody else. I miss her every day and cry about it. I have no idea when I will move on from that. Story 59. 2023 was rough. My granddad was the only dad I ever had. He was diagnosed with bile duct cancer about a month into my pregnancy. On my wedding day, a month later, we were told there were no treatment options and it was only a matter of time. I spent my whole pregnancy terrified that the countdown to my daughter being born was also a countdown to his death. I was also terrified he would die while I was in the hospital. Sure enough, he died 36 hours after I had a cesarean section, and I was still in the hospital. The best thing that ever happened to me and the worst thing that ever happened were less than 2 days apart. I came to understand that when he asked me how many days were left until I had her, he was asking how many days he had to keep fighting for. As soon as he knew we were both safe, he could finally let go. In February, he got out of the hospital the night before my wedding to give me away. In August, I got out of the hospital the night before his funeral to bury him. Story 60. In 2023, I had to end my relationship with my new boyfriend after just a year. He was the love of my life, and I thought I was going to marry him and have children with him. Two of my close friends betrayed me a couple of months later. Three very important relationships were completely gone. I am glad because they were all cruel to me, but the trauma was immense, and I am still recovering from it. Story 61. It is concerning that most of these responses are recent. Society as a whole is experiencing worsening conditions year after year. This is a crisis. Story 62. From 2022 to now, it has been a rough few years, but I feel like I am finally on the upswing and coming out stronger. Story 63. Actually, 2024. Everything was really good this year except for one night, which drastically changed my life permanently with fatal consequences that were not in my control. Story 64. This year, for sure. My dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer on New Year's Day. He is fighting, but it is not going well. My uncle found out his cancer has returned and has decided not to undergo chemotherapy again. He is choosing end-of-life care. While searching for my childhood best friend in hopes of reconnecting, I discovered she had overdosed and died 5 months ago. She is buried in the town where I live, in a grave without a headstone, located at the back of the cemetery next to a dirt lot. Story 65. So far, last year my mother passed away unexpectedly and I am still feeling it. Story 66. 2023, for sure. I lost my mother unexpectedly 9 months after losing my grandmother, her mother. Story 67. In 2022, I had to cut off my lifelong best friend. Both of my childhood pets died, one right before my birthday. I also had to deal with being harassed and stalked by that friend. My anxiety was severe, and I was definitely experiencing some post-traumatic stress. My job was extremely stressful, and I kept getting sick repeatedly. Every day, I felt like I had nothing left in me. Honestly, I am surprised I survived that year. Story 68. 2024. I never expected it. I am holding on to the belief that everything happens for a reason. Someday it will all make sense. Story 69. I lost my last remaining grandparent in January. My paternal grandfather was 97. I also lost my 15-year-old dog, Dart, in April. This year has been difficult. I feel guilty about it, but Dart's passing hurt more. When the veterinarian said he was gone, I almost fell down because my legs stopped working. Story 70. 2020 was a hard time for everyone, and like many of you, I lost a lot. After I lost my job due to the pandemic, I burned through my savings trying to keep my home and pay prior medical bills. Eventually, I couldn't afford rent anymore. I had just moved to Sydney at the end of 2019, so as you can imagine, it was rather expensive, but I was doing great at the start. After everything was gone, I had to sell many of my belongings just to afford to go back to my hometown. I had to live with people I had sworn never to see again, which led to more stress and mental health issues. I also lost the best relationship I ever had. It was my own fault, and I should have tried harder because she was worth it, as well as my best friend of 10 years who meant more to me than most people have. Additionally, a large rift opened between me and some of my family, which was heartbreaking. Today, I am still in my hometown, but I finally have my own place again. It is a lovely flat built about 2 weeks before I moved in. My town never quite recovered from the pandemic, and now employment and housing are hard to come by. Thankfully, the connections I made during the last 4 years helped me get to this point with a good job and a nice home. All in all, 2020 was both the worst and the best thing that ever happened to me. Heartbreaking? Absolutely. I had never felt more defeated. When I came back, just about everyone had forgotten I existed or genuinely thought I was dead. But that was the silver lining because I was given a completely blank slate to start fresh in my hometown. How many people can say they get a chance like that? I met many amazing people because of it, and I have made lifelong friends through it all. It was the most heartbreaking year of my life, but it set me on the path where I am now. Story 71. 2021. The year my sister was murdered. It was my first year of trade school, and in the specific course I was only allowed a few absences. Otherwise, I would automatically fail the semester. There were a few weeks where I would dissociate the entire class, followed by a tearful panic attack in my car between classes. Story 72. In 1987, my grandfather had a stroke. He was bedridden for 13 years until he died. He was unable to talk after 1990. I miss him every day. Story 73. In 2020, I will not go into detail because I do not want to relive the trauma I experienced during the pandemic and other personal challenges. Story 74. In 2024, my first relationship ended. I felt that I worked hard in it. Story 75. I went through difficult times in mid-2017 and again in mid-2019. Everything has improved now. Story 76. In 2018, I was alone in the middle of the desert on a job far from home. My girlfriend, whom I loved, broke up with me while being with someone else after my first marriage ended. Now, I am happily married with a beautiful son and wife, and I believe her life is troubled. Story 77. Other than my dog dying a couple of years ago, I do not think I have ever experienced anything that could be considered heartbreak. It has just been consistently depressing for the last 7 years, so I would choose any year since 2017. Story 78. In 2020, my grandfather died in his sleep from cancer. We couldn't see him, and I not only lost my grandfather, one of my best friends who I was very close with, but I also had to watch a man I thought was invincible cry on my shoulder for the first time in my life. I saw my father cry, and I was stunned. I never got a proper chance to mourn my grandfather. I just watched my dad crumble like old concrete while I comforted him. So yeah, that was a tough year. Story 79. This year I have had bad years before, but this one has relentlessly beaten me up. Story 80. This year has been very difficult. My grandfather passed away, and I experienced a miscarriage. Story 81. Weirdly, 2023 and 2024 were the best years in a while, so it worked out. Story 82. 2002 should have been a great year. My son was born on December 27, 2001, but 2 weeks later, in January 2002, my father was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. We lost him in July. I spent the rest of the year in a fog of postpartum depression and grief. Story 83. 2010. My mother was diagnosed with cancer in April and died in September, 2 months before her 61st birthday. I just realized it has been 14 years. That is a lifetime. Feels like yesterday. Story 84. In 2005, when I was in 6th grade, I lost my dog, cat, and sister. I started at a new school with all new people and was benched for the majority of my competitive sports season. If I can get past that, I can get past anything. Story 85. Depression, anxiety, hopelessness. My grandmother just died. I broke up with my girlfriend because of my depression and drinking. I have to move back to my hometown, which I don't like because there is nothing left for me here. I haven't woken up with purpose in quite some time. I have spent so much on therapy, and I barely feel like it has helped. I had to stop because it was too expensive. Story 86. In 2021, I took care of my brother who died of skin cancer. The only way I can describe it is gruesome. Story 87. In 2022, I lost my grandfather. A month later, my brother passed unexpectedly. 2 months after that, I had to put my first dog down due to an unexpected cancer diagnosis. A few months later, my best friend took his life. The years 2022 and 2023 were a rough time for me, especially as someone who had never experienced death until then. Story 88. Realizing that no matter how I tried or what I did, my parents could not love me or anyone beyond themselves was heartbreaking, but also very freeing. I no longer strive to get their approval. I strive to be better than the person I was yesterday. Story 89. This year, I finally let a man into my life, and he told me he does not feel an emotional connection to me. Story 90. June 22nd, 2013 and August 15th, 2024. Nana and Granddad reunited. Story 91. 2020 was amazing for me, except that I lost my mother before she could physically meet my wife. The years 2022 and the first half of 2023 were very difficult due to a mix of financial ruin and depression. It was a challenging period. Story 92. In 2022, my daughter died from sudden cardiac death. She was 13 weeks pregnant. 3 months earlier, one of my cousins was found dead from an apparent stroke, and my mother's brother died by suicide according to the police. I never want to relive that ever again. Story 93. In 2022, I lost my mother and stepfather within a month of each other. Story 94. In 2017, I lost my sister. In 2020, I lost my father. In 2024, I lost my mind and am trying my best not to say, forget this and give up. Story 95. 2017 was the hardest year. I was graduating from university and experienced the usual stress and anxiety. Additionally, I lost 4 family members all rather suddenly throughout the year, and I was a mess. Story 96. In 2020, I lost my soul dog. He was my best friend. Then, a couple of weeks later, I lost the person I was closest to, my grandpa. Story 97. In 1998, I felt the dread of knowing my classmates and best friends were about to go to college, travel, and do great things after graduation, while I dealt with mental illness. Now I am 44 and could tear up just typing this. Story 98. 2020. Breakup, COVID-19, being unsuccessful at getting my dream job, and my father losing his vision in a hunting accident. Story 99. This one. Our son was stillborn 10 days before our due date in March. One of our sweetest cats, Cake, died on our bedroom floor early Saturday morning. Story 100. When I died of cardiac arrest because my heart broke. Story 101. In 2010, my father passed away, my husband relapsed, and I was diagnosed with stage 2 bladder cancer at 46 years old. Story 102. In 2023, I got what I thought was my dream job only to be fired after 6 months. I found a romantic partner after struggling with dating for a long time, only for her to break up with me. I had a falling out with a longtime friend, and then my dog was dealing with many health issues. I honestly thought I was going to have to put him down. Story 103. In 2023, my pet passed away. Both my parents separated, and I was kicked out at 17. My parents divorced, and my friend was found dead due to drugs. Overall, my environment and mental health were pretty bad. But I kept looking forward to the feeling of not passing that way. I wouldn't be where I am right now otherwise. Live in the moment. Shed a tear. Be happy. And tell the people around you that you love them. Everything is temporary. Story 104. For sure 2024. I lost my father in December of 2023, and all of 2024 has been me wading through grief, trying to find a way out and also figuring out who I am now. I have learned a lot about myself, but it has absolutely been the most difficult year of my life. Story 105. 2023 was very difficult. I already struggled with mental health and relationship challenges. Then things started looking up when I entered a long-distance relationship and friendship challenges eased a bit. However, my uncle's diabetes made him ill and he had to lose his leg. In October, my cousin in Darwin was struck by a tree branch and died. About a week later, my boyfriend went silent. On the same day I learned my uncle was going to pass away, I also found out my boyfriend had a stroke. The next day, my uncle died. After about a month of waiting for my boyfriend, he said he wanted to break up. I managed to talk to him a bit more and tried to support him, and he promised to explain everything. Then I found out he might have been cheating, which was somewhat confirmed when his sister told me he had fallen for someone else. So yes, 2023 was very difficult, but at least things are looking up now. Story 106. In 2022, I experienced a severe mental health crisis that I almost did not survive. I also faced the loss of my soul animal dog and my wonderful father-in-law exactly 2 weeks apart. We all survived, but it left scars. Story 107. In 2022, I helped my mother through a complete mental breakdown. My father passed away, and I rejoined the dating scene after 5 years of being single, only to experience a handful of heartbreaks. Fortunately, I met my wife the following year. Story 108. December 24th, 2022, a 35-year-old daughter died. December 2nd, 2023, the husband was so depressed he became sick and died. Story 109. It is a toss-up between 2012, the year of the first breakup, and 2016, due to everything that happened in the world that year. Story 110. In 2006, my dad died. In 2024, within a matter of 3 months, my wife's grandmother, who raised her as a mother, my wife's uncle, and our dog all died. To top it off, I was laid off from my job. Story 111. In 2024, all 4 of our pets died. All passed away due to age-related illnesses and issues, but that does not make it any easier. Story 112. My grandmother died in 2023. In 2024, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and epilepsy. My uncle also passed away in 2024. Story 113. Last year, I lost my dog and then my dad within 3 months. It was a 1-2 punch to the gut. Story 114. To be honest, it is strange. In 2023, I woke up and realized it is not for me. Story 115. In 2013 and 2014, my husband had an affair while I was pregnant for the first time. During this period, I also lost my eldest grandparent and the patriarch of the family. Story 116. Pretty much all of them. It was a gradual sinking every year. Now I exist in an eldritch nightmare. Story 117. 2020. Today marks 4 years since I last saw my best friend alive. Story 118. In 2024, I lost my partner to psychosis. He is gone. I am okay, but it has been very sad. Story 119. This year, my husband's mental health has been unstable for a while, but worsened with many erratic ups and downs and verbal abuse. He strangled me in July, and I called the police. Now, I am going through a divorce, and he is in jail awaiting charges that carry a 5 to 10 year sentence. I am terrified of who he became to strangle me, and really terrified of who he has become when I called emergency services and made him face consequences. I am also confronted with raising our 2 boys with their father in jail, and handling the financial challenges of suddenly being a 1-income household with many legal fees. It has been a shock, among other things. It feels crazy to have the man I used to trust to protect me now be the one I am legitimately scared might kill me. There is a part of me that still loves him and is haunted by what his life has become. Life is surreal. The kids and I are doing okay. Story 120. In 2020, I watched liver cancer quickly take my grandpa, and then I lost my dad completely unexpectedly just 8 months later. I had a foolish argument with him the last time we spoke. I didn't answer his last call, and I will never forgive myself for it. Story 121. Late 2017 to 2018. My grandfather had a heart attack 3 days after Christmas and died unexpectedly. We moved in with my grandmother so she could continue living at home. Even though we literally lived next door, it was still a major change in life. Story 122. In September 11th to 12th, 2011, I watched as the towers fell. 2 hours later, I ran to the hospital because my wife felt something was wrong with our baby. Just after midnight, we were told that our baby would be stillborn. The funeral was a week later. Still grieving, I returned to work. On October 5th, as I was trying to work, the secretary said I had a call. It was my sister telling me that my older brother had passed in an accident the night before on our mother's birthday. I still do not like answering phone calls from my family. Story 123. 2023 is a year of mixed emotions for me. I hated it, feared it, and loved it all at the same time. Let me explain. Early last year, my dog died shortly after my birthday. After that, we decided to sell the house because it was too hard to be in a place full of memories. After accepting an offer, I called my parents to tell them the news. The next day, my mother died. It gets even more intense. About 2 weeks into grieving, I noticed my breasts hurt and I felt nauseous. Yes, I was pregnant. We sold the house, started moving, and lived 3 months in Branson, Missouri. That was the worst and best year for me. Story 124. 2020 and 2021 were some really tough years. 2024 has been better. Story 125. In 2024, I lost my soul dog, the most important and precious thing in my life. I miss you every day, Bailey. Story 126, 2008, the year my husband died, and 2024 is running a close second as I had to euthanize my 9.5-year-old German Shepherd dog, who had been my constant companion since he was 8 weeks old. It seems that everything is going wrong this year anyway, so both years are difficult. Story 127, 2009 was the year she started cheating on me. 2024 has not been easy either. We are stuck in the remodeling project from hell. My savings are depleted, and 2 days ago our roof started leaking badly. Story 128. In 2023, I was diagnosed with a very serious type of cancer. My first child had just turned 1. So my life completely fell apart after experiencing the most wonderful, happy, and joyful 2022 with the birth of my daughter. Story 129. In 2020, my wife lost her dad and aunt on the same day in January. Then, my wife lost her mom in March and I lost my dad 10 days later on my mom's birthday, all from different causes. 2020 was difficult for everyone, but ours was especially hard. Thankfully, my mom is in great health, but it hurts that my children never really got to grow up with 3/4 of their grandparents. I feel frustrated when friends share minor complaints about their parents or in-laws. They will not be around forever. Story 130. 2015 was the year I came out. I thought my entire life was over. I am glad I was wrong. Life is pretty great now, a decade later. Story 131. In 2019, I lost my brother to cancer. I also lost someone I thought was a friend, but it turned out he was dishonest and tried to ruin my reputation. This caused other so-called friends to leave me. Lastly, my college made it harder for me to succeed. Story 132. In 2023 and 2024, at the end of 2023, I lost my childhood pet and 2 other cats. Both of my best friends stopped contacting me. A man I was dating at the time injured his arm in front of me because I had online friends. This was the lowest point of my life. Story 133. The year was 1997. My family had a very difficult weekend. My grandfather passed away early in the morning on Friday. My sister miscarried on Saturday. Sunday was Easter, and my uncle's mother-in-law passed away on Monday. Also, somewhere in there was my 20th birthday. Story 134. From 2023 to 2024, I dealt with a breakup with someone extremely narcissistic and abusive. I can't get into vehicles without severe panic attacks and started fainting from stress, such as hearing someone knock on doors. I am currently still dealing with severe post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety issues on top of heart problems. I can't catch my breath anymore due to long COVID. At only 25, I feel everything is deteriorating around me. I feel lost and am trying to dig my way out of this hole. I am also trying to quit drinking and dealt with harassment from my ex until last month. It's a rough time, but there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. Story 135. Every year after 2020 has been worse than the previous one. In 2020, I lost the only good thing that ever happened to me. This situation is unbelievable. Story 136. In 2023, was diagnosed with breast cancer and left ventricular noncompaction heart failure. Story 137. In 2018, my best friend died at age 24 from epilepsy. In 2020, my fiancé ghosted me after I moved 13 hours away for him. In 2023, I met the real love of my life the year before, and he broke my heart. I spent my birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's alone. Story 138. 2014 was a very difficult year for me. In the span of 3 weeks, my lifelong best friend's older brother went missing. My 10-month-old pet rat became sick and died in my hands. My grandmother died on the operating table, and then my friend's brother was found in the woods, dead by suicide. My grandmother really held my mother's side of the family together, and nothing has been the same since she passed. My friend's brother hurt the most. I am older now than he was then. It is hard knowing such an intelligent, thoughtful, and sensitive man thought that oblivion was his best option. I know I am not responsible, but I can never shake the feeling that I let him down. that if I had not been so wrapped up in my own problems, I could have seen a sign or something. My heart breaks for my friend, who lost her brother. Everything I have felt about it, she must feel 100 times more. She has 2 other brothers, but she and he were closest. His funeral was devastating. His family was ashamed that he killed himself, and it was just his small family and me there. The youngest brother is severely autistic, and they told him he went back home. It was heartbreaking. Story 139. During a 5-week period in 2023, the following events occurred. Lost a grandparent. Lost my job. Received alarming test results and experienced a serious health scare. House suffered significant damage in a fire and burned down, with no guarantee of insurance coverage due to the circumstances. Lost another grandparent, my last. Spouse learned their job was at risk due to their company ceasing operations. These issues were resolved, but I was very happy to leave 2023 behind. Story 140. In 2016, I lost my last parent and was unemployed. I nearly became homeless. Donald Trump was president. Story 141. In 2012, I misheard something that scared me enough to become temporarily homeless. I dislike the word trauma, but if I were to say that year drained my soul, and things have not been right in life since, that would still be an understatement. Story 142. In 2013, I was in the military. I signed divorce papers on Valentine's Day, then watched my wife drive away with my son in my car. After that, I had to go back to work. I spent the whole year drinking, not caring if I died. Sometimes I still feel that way. I hate it. Story 143. In 2018, my mother suffered a stroke, and my father experienced a series of minor strokes. Story 144. In 2021, I lost my father suddenly, actually today, and broke up with a girl I loved a lot at the time. I drank too much and barely made it through. I am much better now. Story 145. In 2007, I lost my father to suicide. 17 years ago tomorrow, actually. I have been feeling emotional this week. It never gets easier. Time just keeps moving forward. Story 146. February 2009 to February 2010. I lost my brother-in-law to a brain tumor. He was 53. In October 2009, I lost my sister, who was 49, to a degenerative brain disorder. In February 2010, I lost my dad to lung cancer. My dad lived with us during the last couple of months of his life under in-home hospice care. During that time, I discovered that my dad's girlfriend's son charged over $40,000 on his credit cards, which wiped out his savings. I never want to relive that year. By the way, the son died in 2020 from coronavirus disease. Story 147. 2011 was the year I broke. Something inside me died that year, and I never recovered. Story 148. From 2020 to 2024, many significant events occurred in my life. In 2020, I realized I was no longer in love with my wife of 10 years. In 2022, I had to put my dog down and ask my wife for a divorce. In 2023, my grandfather passed away. In 2024, a girl I had fallen in love with chose someone else. I also discovered that my best work friend barely sees me as a friend. Additionally, I do not expect my grandmother to make it past this Christmas. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.